Not gonna lie, literally pissing my pants right now. So glad this lectern is in front of me so you can't see. So I'm Luke Evans, and I'm like sort of a photographer. And I say that because most of the work that I make is either not using a camera or is perhaps more sculpture-based, and the camera's just there to bring it to life. So tonight I'm gonna just speed you through some of my work and then into something really important that totally changed my life, and finally onto something I'm working on right now. So the first one's Inside Out. So my friend and Josh and I did this project back at Kingston when we were studying graphics, and we had this idea that we would do this internal self-portrait, perhaps by eating something that could take a picture of our insides. And naturally, as photographers, the way to do this was with film. So our idea was that film is made up of gelatin and suspended silver crystals, and perhaps by eating the film, the gelatin would be dissolved and leave an impression of our insides. So we kind of researched the dangers of doing something like this, and surprisingly it's got nothing to do with the chemical makeup of film. It's to do with the shape and the size and how sharp film is. So the way we got around it was we cut a single slide of 35mm film, cut the corners off, then rolled it up and put it inside a plastic band. So that would stop it from like opening up and lacerating our insides. So just before I was about to do this, I thought it would be a good idea to ring my mum, bearing in mind she's a nurse. And so I told her about the project, and there was just this silence for what seemed like forever. And then just out of nowhere, what has this got to do with graphic design? I mean, she had a point, but we did it anyway. Which leads me on to the question that we always get asked about this project, which is, how did you get it back? There's no way to sugarcoat over this. What we had to do was every time we needed the loo, we had to poo in a bag and wear like rubber gloves and just feel through it. Now I've got IBS, so mine pretty much just flew out, but Josh's for some reason took like 3 long days. But we got them back and we couldn't believe what they looked like. They were still intact. They had bubbles all over the surface. They were a little bit broken. And because this project became more about using film in a sort of non-traditional sense, we ended up turning these into images with an electron microscope. I mean, not this one. I have no idea who this guy is. I just got this from Google. And here they are inside the chamber, and these are what we got. Now, they're actually quite close to the whole frame of the film. They look really zoomed in, but they're not. It's just some of the details. You can see all the layers have been like eaten away, and like all this twisting. And here they are printed, and there's Josh. So something really weird happened with this project, which is within 24 hours of putting this online, this happened.
2 first-year students at Kingston University decided to record how the insides of their bodies alter materials by eating 35mm film and letting their internal organs do the rest.
So that was really, really bizarre. I really never thought my arsehole would be that famous. But we did find that the exposure can work in 2 ways. Somehow this image got its way online. It's just this like internal mock-up that we used to explain the project to our tutors. And we got this email. Hi Luke, really cool installation Inside Out. Is this your chest x-ray? You've got a foreign body, I presume a piece of film, the lower left lobe of your lung. This potentially is not good news. Are you coughing? Thanks, please let me know. Alan the radiologist in Chicago. Thanks Alan, I'm okay. So Zero is probably the most dangerous project I've ever worked on, and it started with this idea that I would use electricity to make images with. Turns out I'm just good at finding ways to endanger myself. So I started looking at the ways the electricity could leave marks, or how it could potentially alter materials. And that's when I came across this amazing old ad by Xerox, where they explained the process of photocopying, which is where you use electricity, film, light, toner powder, and a paper to transfer the image across. So I thought this was amazing. This is what like the photocopiers downstairs are doing. They print with electricity. So I thought, maybe if I use this process, reverse engineer it, I might be able to show what a static electrical field looks like. And that's what I spent the next 12 months doing, building like really shitty bootleg Van de Graaff generators out of kind of copper cans and like batteries. This was Christmas Eve at my mum's house. But eventually, after enough toying around, I had a working process. So what happens is I place an electrode on a piece of plastic and then zap it with one of the Van de Graaff generators and then dust it with toner powder. And the image just like shows up. So then I place a piece of paper on top, heat sealed it, which is why the ink is like so warm when it comes out of a photocopier. And I got these. They're kind of hard to see on the projector because the light tones are quite difficult to see. And it turns out that the kind of shapes that are made on the inside can be determined by the weather, of all things. Like when it was really humid, I just couldn't get an image. And I made loads of these and edited them just like any other photograph. And not that this should be like a running theme in my work, but I showed my brother and this is what he thought. Thanks, Joel. And they're also a book designed by a commission studio who are here tonight. So if you want one, just hit them up. So I thought at this point, I'm calling myself a photographer. I should probably use a camera at some point. So this is Forge. It actually began because I used to bake as a form of stress relief. So I just had to show those horrific hanging flowers in my mum's house. And I was building like pizza dough or something, and I thought that the flower looked like a rocky landscape or something. And so I whipped it off the table and grabbed like a really shitty light and camera, and I got this. Again, the projection quality is not great. I did not take this on my phone. I did use an alright camera. I couldn't believe the depth that you can get in something so small. And I made a whole series of these. So this one's just a rock and like some salt and shaving foam. I can feel my agent in the audience being like, please don't tell people how you work. This is so gross. And this project became a really good exercise in making something from nothing. This one's a piece of paper. A really, really, really terrible table. And here they are printed again. So at this point, I was making work a lot. I was really on that treadmill, like banging out work. This is on Shockwave. So this is what explosive energy looks like, where I worked with this ex-MOD munitions expert. I'm probably going to watch this video back and see like a red dot on my head but by telling you this. And I learned how to make like a homemade bomb and put it inside some clay and then detonate it. And then I cast the cavity that was left inside, which results in those black sculptures. And this is a personal favorite. This is called Afterburn. This one might quite difficult to see on the images, but these kind of like abstract, almost like charcoal-y drawings are actually the floors of dance studios. So the dancers have like left a big burning mark in the floor and left a map of all the performances. This one's, I think, 9 meters long. So this was all going great, and I was making work all the time. Then something happened to put a stop to all of this. In 2015, I was working on the Zero project for an exhibition at Somerset House. And it was really late at the studio. I got back, and I was taking a shower, and I was washing, and I noticed something. I found a lump on my right testicle. My heart just sunk. I couldn't sleep. I just instantly assumed the worst. So a week of doctor's visits go by, and I'm finding myself waiting for scan results the following morning. And at this point, I'm working on the exhibition so hard to take my mind off of everything that's going on. I'm working on the biggest electrical print I've ever made. And out of nowhere, this storm comes. And my studio at the time was like a barn with like gaps where windows used to be, and so you can imagine what happened. The wind blew through, it ripped off all the tests that I had on the wall. The print that I was working on for weeks and weeks lifted up, tore, and fell on the floor. Everything was just fucked. And I just broke. I left the studio and I drove out to the middle of nowhere. And I lay on the floor and my teeth on the tarmac. And I just screamed. But to be honest, I can't really remember what happened in that moment, but what I do remember is that my phone had managed to like grasp onto the last bit of signal, and there on that screen were my friends and family rebuilding everything at the studio. Up until that point, I put so much pressure on myself to be perfect. Having help was a sign of weakness. But in that moment, everything had changed, and I've never been more grateful for anything in my life. It gets better. The next day, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer. But luckily enough for me, my paranoia and anxiety had paid off this time. I found it at a really early stage. Within 24 hours, I had my right testicle removed, and the margins came back normal. My treatment would be 10 years of regular observation, saving chemotherapy for a rainy day. I'm currently on my 4th year. But after that whole experience, to tell you the truth, I didn't care about photography. I didn't care about art. It just seemed so irrelevant. What had happened is that I was experiencing this form of burnout that had come because I had to stop and think about what I was doing. I had to stop to pay attention to myself. Now, I wish I could stand up here and say I have some magical formula for all of this, but the reality is it's taken me years of professional and self-help, and all the time watching the most incredible work come in day after day after day, and dealing with the guilt, knowing that I'm taking time out for myself, and worse yet, the fear of being forgotten. But to stand here and know that that time was worth it, and to know that you won't be forgotten as long as you don't give up, and just take that time to be selfish, is the most liberating feeling. I did, though, find one thing that got me through all of this, and that was archery, of all things. And it was the perfect balance of mental stillness and reflection, and most importantly, the ability to win things. And within 12 months, I was scouted by the Team GB coach and began training a hell of a lot. And over that time, archery taught me how to be confident again. So last year, I picked up my camera one more time and decided to continue where I left off. And this is second nature, and it's something I'm working on right now. I never felt finished with the landscape work before in Forge, so I had to kind of bin the feeling that I was repeating myself and just give myself the time to explore. So this one's called Glacier, and I shot it over the winter that's just gone. And of course, I showed my mum, and it'd been so long since the last one. She was just like, "Where's that? Where did you go on holiday? When did you go?" And then I showed her this, and I was like, yes, finally, I haven't actually truly lost it. I'd always wanted to work with ice, and I could never really afford a freezer big enough until last year. But something kind of funny happened with this one, which is with the color. So I dyed the water, and as it was freezing, the kind of particles kept moving closer and closer together, which resulted in that gradient. It's totally planned. One of the inspirations for this was this brilliant book called America's Wonderland. I was flicking through it, and I found this. It stopped me. I was like, what the hell is this? And it turns out it's called the Firefall. And what had happened is, in Yosemite, the owner of the hotel above this peak would burn fires for the guests and then put it out by kicking it over the hill to make this waterfall of fire. So I thought, this is incredible. This is amazing. Funny enough, it got banned because of wildfires. But I thought, I have to do this myself. I have to do this again. It's going to be awesome. I want that fiery energy. It's going to be awesome. So I had this big plan to take a ton of burning embers and take them to a quarry with water below and get away with it all. But there was a problem. And I think we're all guilty of this, which is when you convince yourself so much that something's going to work that you stop thinking like a human being. Because wildfires started breaking out, and actually not far from me on the Malvern Hills, a single barbecue had lit fire to the whole of the top of the hill. So I was like, okay, probably shouldn't be doing this. So I thought of something else. Now I live on a farm, and that comes with its benefits. And I somehow convinced the owner of the farm to lift up a ton of burning embers and actually make them fall from a height. This is them falling after about the 10th attempt. It turns out I'm really shit at making fires. And this is what I got. Again, it's quite hard to see the subtle tones, but I just love that fiery energy. I got it from it. And this one's a personal favorite. Again, this one's really difficult to see on there. I do apologize for the projection. I did not take this on a phone. Because if you look closer with this one, they kind of look like birds, but they're actually birch seeds. So I spent weeks and weeks, and literally weeks, finding the most bird-like seeds out of this birch tree, and then really precariously balanced my large format camera like over the edge of this. And this last one I'm going to show you felt like a really full circle moment for me. It's because the idea for this one started with archery. I can't believe I've managed to get this into the presentation. If you're having a really shit day, like that's what your target face looks like. But if you hold it up to the light, it kind of looked like dappled sunlight. So I thought, well, what if I did this with a picture? What if I destroyed a picture and then lit it from the back and rephotographed it? So I used this like 70s old like etched glass star filter on the back to kind of exaggerate the sunlight, which resulted in that. Oh, that feels so nice. That feels so nice. Oh, sorry. Thinking out loud. There's a detail of it too. Sounds like a nature. It's a really, really, really short snippet of the project. It's nice that I posted an article about it today, and I'm like over the moon. Thank you, Lucy, so much. And just before I close, I just wanted to say like how important this moment has been for me, because I wish I could have seen this when I thought I was just going to disappear and I never wanted to make work again. So I'm just really hoping that if anyone is going through like a really shit time, to just take it from like this fucking failed scientist with half a bollock and a camera, to just not give up and be a little bit selfish. Thank you.